have a presentation during our educational support meeting today. And this is the Western New York Education Equity Task Force school choice project that has been meeting for quite a long time, and we'll have more of the time frame. And I thought that it was beneficial that Dr. Mubanga hear about the work and the new board members who are unaware. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Mubanga to get us started.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair Shuda. Just want to welcome all our cabinet members here, as well as our board members in attendance, and especially to our two special guests that are here with us today. So I'm not going to take too much time here, and I'm going ahead to introduce our special guest, Mr. Redford. That does not need any introduction. Everybody knows him. And then also Dr. Rosenblith. They are the one that will be presenting today. So without further ado, the floor is open.
Okay, you can go right to the phone line.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I want to just say thank you to Chairperson Shudo, to Superintendent Mubanga, other board members and cabinet members for this time today. My name is Suzanne Rosenblith, and I serve as the Dean of the Graduate School of Education at UB. And I'm also one of the conveners of the Western New York Education Equity Task Force. And just a tiny little bit of background about who the Western New York Education Equity Task Force is and why we're even here today. So we're a broad-based group of community members, clergy, faculty, and others from the university, parents, really anyone who wants to join. And we come together because we care about issues of educational equity across Western New York. We were inspired by the Racial Equity Task Force, which was a community university partnership that began, I don't even know how many years ago, and really they came together to really talk about health disparities. And we thought, well, gosh, why can't we just model something similar around educational disparities and come together and bring our perspectives and our lenses to these issues. And so that's how we started. And we quickly decided that the way that we were going to operate was sort of two approaches. One was just like the Health Disparities Task Force, we would have an annual conference where we would take up some issue related to education equity and talk about it, and bring a speaker in and just kind of coalesce around some topic. And then in our day-to-day work, we were going to advocate for what we like to call just-in-time issues. So these are issues that emerge across Western New York, and we learn about them and then take a position and advocate. So as an example, the previous superintendent worked hard to promote the 3-bell schedule to address some of the busing issues. And we thought this made good sense. And so that was something that we advocated for. And so through our networks, then we, made the case for that 3-bell schedule up to whether it be the governor's office or wherever. We had a lot of members come to meetings and asked about, this is just when the governor first began talking about the cell phone policy. A lot of members came and said, wait, is this a good thing or it's a bad thing? And we said, yes. And we said, no, we need to learn about this. And so we brought in some researchers from the university who know something about this, and they really held listening sessions so that, if we were to take a position, we would take an educated position on a matter. So that's sort of how we operate. And so with that as backdrop, I'll say that a couple of things got us to this school choice discussion. So the first was, having been involved with the 3-bell schedule, we started to learn quite a bit about transportation in the district. And so we know that there still remain transportation challenges. Chief of them might be cost. that it's a pretty hefty ticket from what we understand. We also know that unlike this is not unique to Buffalo, but many districts across the country are facing declining enrollments. And that is a challenge for public schools, I think, nationally. Within Buffalo, we also know that since COVID, chronic absenteeism still persists. So those were three issues that we knew existed. So sort of bracketing that for a moment, we had parents and families come to the task force meeting and said that they had some challenges with school. So in many cases, because of the way that the choice plan works, we have families who live quite a distance from their schools. We also, I believe, have quite a few families who don't have access to vehicles. And so to get to their kids' schools in the ways that we might have experienced advocating for our kids by going to their schools can be a challenge for some. Another byproduct of that, from what they were sharing with us, is that because there's not a familiarity between many parents and the schools, and the leadership in those schools, parents don't always feel welcome in those schools. We also learned from visitors to the Western New York Education Equity Task Force meetings that there's a lot of confusion about the current choice model. So a parent told us that he did his due diligence, or he thought he did his due diligence, bought a home in a neighborhood where he wanted his kid to go to school, only to find out that he could not just enroll his child in that school, and was kind of flabbergasted by this. And then I think the last thing that has come up in some of our meetings is that there seems to be a misalignment between how school board members are elected and the neighborhoods, and there's a misalignment. And so I think Sam has explained it this way, that the school board elections still follow a neighborhood model, even though that doesn't track with how students are placed. And so, in other words, I can live in this district, my kids go to school over there, and so while I have a representative, that representative isn't representing my kid's school, and that creates a disconnect. And then the third area that sort of prompted all of this work that prompted this study is what the research tells us on choice. And what the research tells us is that choice without quality does not improve student outcomes. Sometimes in the literature, they call this a bare opportunity as opposed to a real opportunity. Studies consistently find that choice mechanisms only work when all of the options available are worth choosing. And then you're truly making a preferential choice. In a district where the majority of schools perform similarly and perform poorly, expanding choice merely reshuffles students among low-performing schools without driving any kind of systemic improvement. And the concern is that might be what is, or the question is that what is going on here in Buffalo? So that's sort of the backdrop to why we sort of felt that the Western New York Education Equity Task Force was really well positioned to take on this issue. And it wasn't about, what we really wanted to do is to gather data to be able to tell this story. So I'll turn it over to Sam to talk about the next steps and how we approach this.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Is it possible for me to see the board members and the superintendent on this screen while we're talking? Is that possible? Is it possible for me to see them?
All right, what do you mean, Sam? Because
Well-
we all in different screens, so.
Well, no, but you could set up this screen so I can see you. There we go. There we go. So I just want to, because I want to, just see who I'm talking to, just because, first of all, this is really not a new conversation. You know what I'm saying? So I'm really, thankful for the opportunity to be able to present to everybody here. The only person that we haven't began this conversation with here is Dr. Mubanga. Everybody else, we've started this conversation. So I really want to just kind of just, say two things. First of all, just to expand on the people, why we think the Western Europe Education Equity Task Force is well positioned to try to advance this conversation. We are all in this together. Everybody here, board members, staff people, former staff people who used to be board members, and just everybody that we have here, we've been all trying to get at how we get better educational outcomes. For me, 35 years, but I've known everybody in here somewhere in that range for 35 years. And everything that we're talking about is connected to the issues that we've raised. So first of all, we say that we can't put it all on the teachers, the administrators, or the school board or the school district. So so we come to this conversation with a whole group of additional partners to partner in how we get to the solution to, how we get better outcomes. So we come with higher ed, we come with clergy, we come with community-based organizations, we come, with business organizations, we come with not-for-profits, philanthropy. All these people are part of the Western New York Education Equity Task Force because we know when we try to do something as big as, really, something, that's going to have this level of impact, you're going to need everybody's input, and so that's who the Western New York Education Equity Task Force is. We've listened. Before we got here, we listened. So, for example, we listened to school board members tell us that we got to have more family and community engagement. We got to have more parents of children who go to schools involved in what's going on at the school. So, it's one thing to say it, it's another thing to come up with a way to get it done. We've heard the administration talk about, teachers talk about, we can't teach kids who ain't in school. You know what I'm saying? If the kids ain't here, if we got an attendance issue, we got to deal with the attendance issue. So yeah, we agree. Got to deal with the attendance issue. And so we can go on and talk about, we talk about this issue around the decline in enrollment. People saying, listen, we got to make this public school option, something that parents want to choose. And so we're all in agreement on all those things. But the question is, what are we going to do, right? And so what we're trying to figure out is how we can tap into everybody and come up with a plan that actually moves the agenda, right? So we started with something that we at least feel like touches on all of that, right? So let's start with the whole idea of community schools / neighborhood schools. We had that as an initial conversation because when parents came to the table, issues that they were raising at that particular time, specifically around transportation, that was the one we really mobilized on quick. We don't got enough bus drivers. We're not going to have enough in the foreseeable future. So to continue to put kids on buses that we know we don't have enough of, it's just strategically don't make sense. And then we also losing other opportunities. Kids can't do after school programs, kids can't do sports, it's all kind of fallout from not having enough bus drivers that we need to address. So we looked at, okay, so some people here remember years ago when Dr. Mauricio put together this project around having kids, 70% of the kids go to one of the 3 schools closest to their house, right? I mean, he laid it all out and we kind of got, I talked to people that say yes, they say, we thought that was in existence, blah, 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 blah. But we got people who've put together ideas on how we can move this agenda and they just never move. So what we want to do right now is commit to being an organization that will facilitate a conversation to move the agenda. We know what that requires is some research so that we ain't talking about just anecdotal data. We ain't talking about knee-jerk reactions. We talk about getting some research. So we started that process. Dr. Simone Freed began the research process. We had conversation with board member Shuda, who is a South Buffalo former principal, who talked about its impact potentially in South Buffalo. We talked to other board members. We talked to candidates before they became board members around the importance of aligning this governance model that we have with our placement model, so that as a parent, I'm not disenfranchised because I live in East District, but my children go to school in Central District. So I can't elect the central district representative. So we also talk about the misalignment with the council. We need to get more resources from the city of Buffalo. You know what I'm saying? And if the council member had skin in the game because the schools in his neighborhood, the parents from that same neighborhood, the board member from that same neighborhood, you know, in the community schools conversation, they talked about the challenge of having a walking school bus because of the issues going on in the neighborhood and the council member not having skin in the game in a way to be responsive to that. So after we looked at all this, we said, okay, here is a perfect place to start this conversation. We've listened. We know that this will, if we start with this conversation, we will have something that touches on all those areas where we heard people talk about we need to have some kind of resolution at. And so what we wanted to do is start with getting some initial research. Y'all were superintendent, the previous superintendent, I want to say Tanja Williams. I'm trying to get her new last name. Knight, there you go. Superintendent Williams Knight was, you know, put us in a position where we can have access to the research, access to the data, so we can get the research. So now we've had that initial research, right? Dr. Rosenbluth shared that, you know, that's going to be turned from qualitative to quantitative so that we can come back to you and start a conversation about how do we all come together and co-create, co-produce something that deals with all these issues that we're laying out. If community schools, neighborhood schools is what does it, great. But if not, what does? But the issue becomes we gotta have something that we can move on so that we can now begin to get some equity in this district. We cannot continue just to explain, to say that we have problems because parents ain't participating, because kids ain't coming to school, just talking in reactive terms, but don't have no plan, no strategy to actually do anything about it. We feel like we can put together something that does something about it, and we want to partner with you to do it.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Does anybody have any of our board members? Do you have any comments or questions? Board member Scott?
Yes, thank you, Chairwoman Shuda. Thank you to the guests, Mr. Radford, and Susan for being here. I was hoping that we would have actual study results today, but I'm glad that we are extending this conversation that I believe has been ongoing with board members and in other places. And last year I raised this as something that needs to be studied. And if we kind of go backwards, the reason why school choice happened was it was court ordered to desegregate our schools. And I think as a part of that study, we need to see if we're still achieving that desegregation. Are we still in the same place that we were as far as our demographics go and how our schools are integrated when this all began? I cited that back then that Chicago Public Schools is looking to go back to more neighborhood schools. Rochester is using attendance zones. So it's a few schools within your neighborhood proximity that you get to choose from. Dr. Orfield did his study several years ago, and in that report, he indicated at the height of integrated schools in Buffalo, there were three types of magnet schools: regional magnets, citywide magnets with a neighborhood guarantee, citywide magnets with no neighborhood guarantee. Students from the entire city could apply to the regional magnets. However, if a student lived in the attendance zone, they were guaranteed a spot. So at that time, back in the 70s, 80s, that we had some sort of regional community neighborhood preference that was built in when our schools were most integrated. So I guess just to kind of close out, I would like to see us as a board, as a district, initiate a thorough study on the integration of our schools and parent preference. Are parents really getting their choices when they apply to the schools, and what their first, second, and third choices are, and which schools they're ending up getting assigned to? And would parents prefer to have something, a school option that's guaranteed in their neighborhood? Because we don't have that across the board. And I still think we do have to maintain some school choice, especially with high schools, because they are so unique, and possibly with other schools that offer something unique at the elementary level. But I think given our transportation demands and other things that the presenters have spoken about, I think this is worthy of a very comprehensive study. Thank you.
May I make a?
Sure.
So thank you for those comments, Board Member Scott. I do think that some of the, and we will have the full comprehensive report on the data after the new year to you. But I believe that the preliminary data show that about 70% of families don't choose, don't make a preference in Buffalo. So, and so I think the question there is why, right? Why aren't they making a choice?
What do you mean?
What do you mean by that?
Their
Right.
place, they're not, they
Their
don't
place.
do their
All
children.
their
They're not making a preference. So there's one question I think about what choice you get, but then there's this question of why is there a whole significant number of families who aren't even actively choosing?
But you have to choose on the application. So
You're not
what do
getting
you,
your choice.
they're not getting the choice.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
That's right.
The data will show they're not even getting, some of them not getting their first three choices.
Right. Exactly. That's what I meant. Yeah.
And just remember when Lou was the board president, you had shared with us that that was the case. Where did that data come from, that when you was sharing it with us, that 70% of the students are placed versus?
If memory serves, it came from student placement way back when they were, it's when we did a survey about, or I'll say, asked them to compile a report with respect to who was putting what and whether or not, because we had heard the same thing, that people were not. Some of it were schools, though I will just give a little bit of a caveat. Sometimes they were schools that people selected that they wanted to go to that school, but it was late, they weren't qualifying for the application, like that kind of thing. And there were, but yeah, that was a while ago. We had also disaggregated the data by zip code as well, in terms of where parents were selecting, how we were selecting within their zip code, because that was because we didn't have the school zones. So that was, I'll say, the best proxy that we had in the town to find out. This goes back a long way.
Yeah, so this is not a new problem, is the point I'm making. That it's been a long time that parents have not been getting their choice. The majority, and when you talk about 70-80%, those numbers are really high. The data will show that, but that data is just verifying what parents have known and what school board members have known and what we have known for 20 years.
Board Member Woods?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. The first thing I want to say is, because we have admissions problems and our system doesn't allow a majority of students in the African American community to get their first, second, or third choice. And a lot of times they do wind up in the neighborhood schools. If the system of allocating the children is broken, fix it. You cannot throw out the democratic position that parents have a right to be able to pick any school in this district and be allowed to have a significant presence at the better criterion schools. It's abandoning school choice is not an option. The analysis of whether or not people, parents are getting their choice and why, that has to be handled and documented and spelled out. That research is critical. Um, it is City Honors is my high school. It has 15% diversity, Black and brown children in it. It sits in the middle of the East Side, but our East Side children can't get in. So going to neighborhood preference does not seem to address the problem. We have a school in North Buffalo, excellent new schools, but African Americans, parents who even live in the area, can't get into that school. So further segregation is not an answer. When we look at school choice, we actually have to expand school choice. And it is a tricky, very tricky thing that to come up with both. Okay, moving to total segregation. Okay, there's too many. The majority of the school students are African American and brown, so we're just going to have segregated schools. So write off any attempt to actually get our children, and I do mean the Black community's children, into City Honors, into the better schools, into Umstead, into the feeder schools. That is not an option. Okay. I understand both sides of it. I want children to be able to walk to school, parents to be able to walk to school and participate and have a voice. And I want them to be aware of their neighborhoods and their fellow students that live in their neighborhood, in the Strenton neighborhood. Yeah, all of those are wonderful goals, but no goal is more important than good education for all of our kids, which means making all of these neighborhood schools good. And no goal is more important than democracy, that every child and every parent can get into the best schools. Those are the two principles I have to stand on. And your research needs to come out with a way to maintain that, because I'm not sold on any solution that doesn't embrace both. Okay.
Thank you.
Can I say give a short response?
Sure.
Board member Woods, I appreciate what you said, but the truth of the matter is, that's a nut that we tried to crack, going all the way up to OCR, Office of Civil Rights, and having the Office of Civil Rights come in and come up with ways to create solutions to that. And so I appreciate what you're saying, and it almost makes me want to say, let's take City Honors and almost take the criteria-based schools out of this conversation, because that's such a small group of people in the district that to have this conversation focus on that, when you know better than anybody that you can say whatever you want to say, but the forces that protect that have protected that against a Office of Civil Rights ruling, right? So what we're talking about now is the average parent whose child is not going to City Honors or Olmsted. We're talking about the parent of who's a homeowner who bought a house in South Buffalo, and they want their child to go to the school closer to their house, or at least one of the three schools close to their house. They ain't even trying to get to City Honors or Olmsted. We're talking about the parent who just wants to be able to get to a school so if their child misses the bus, they can still get to school if they don't have a car. We talk about that parent, right? So those parents whose children go to City Honors and Olmsted and the criteria-based school, they are clearly powerful enough and resourced enough to do the advocacy you're doing now. But what about the rest of them? The 70% of parents who, are not getting a choice. They don't have the power to get into those schools, and they want to be able to go to their neighborhood school. So that's kind of where our conversation is at.
Sam, I'm not talking about just City Honors. I'm talking about we cannot maintain a 2 or 3 tier school system. That is against everybody's civil rights. Hutch Tech, that's my school. Buffalo Performing Arts, my school. Emerson. We're talking about there are 2 tiers of schools, and we must address that everybody has a shot at getting into those schools, and that your neighborhood preference doesn't close out minorities living in Hurdle from the opportunity to go into North District, which is what is happening right now. These issues must be addressed concurrently. And if the problem is improving what they do down there at the Ash Street Center, let's start there.
Okay, thank you. Adriana?
Thank you. Well, I had one comment as far as the board elections, not reflecting neighborhoods, well, school placement, or reflecting the neighborhoods you live in and not school placement. We do have 3 at-large members, so please reach out to all of us. But I don't know anybody, any of my colleagues that would say like, sorry, you don't live in this district. I think you could reach out to both maybe, like where you live and where the school is. So, yeah, please don't feel like you can't reach out to any of us, any of the 9 of us. I was surprised. I have learned on this committee I'm on that 6 out of 7 of our children are bused. 86%. That's wild to me. I had no idea it was that high. And some things stand out, like I was also surprised 2 of our schools that are in receivership, 93% and 94% of the students are bused in. So it's not children living there going to this school necessarily. The only 6 or 7% are. Yeah, but I would like to see the data for this. 70% of families not getting a choice. I mean, I've heard of some families, I want to go to this school, and then I look and I'm like, well, this school's not full. Why is that? And it's not a criteria school. Like, is there not the staff? Like, what are some of the things going on? So there's like, I think we have to cast a wide net. I look forward to the data. In January, I've had the pleasure of a child going to a school close to me, and it was just so much easier. I mean, I was in the parent, group. I would strap my baby and walk over, and it was just very easy to be engaged, like living minutes away at that time. But thank you so much for our presenters. Yeah, we absolutely want to make sure we keep our schools diverse, but I would love to see strong schools everywhere. And I think with our new superintendent, we're going to be moving schools forward, but I would love to see strong communities, strong neighborhoods, neighborhood schools where possible.
And I think I want to react on something Sam said. I get the call from families that buy a house and just assume that they're going to be able to go to this school 50 feet from their home, and that isn't the case. And in my community, and I know it's in all the communities, I have a charter school that is filled. There's a private school that is filled. And I do believe the way that we've looked at the way students are placed is part of the problem of the lead of the students that have left the Buffalo schools. So if we can, and I have total confidence in Dr. Mubanga, and we've had some conversations, and I know he's talking to different community members, that is something that we have to just be honest. We have to look at problems, we have to attack them. And that's why this is a hard discussion. And I'm winding down. This is my second last committee meeting. And I just wanted to make sure this conversation is started, and that I think we've set the groundwork that it will continue after January, because I know, I'm looking at some of the data of the enrollment in some of these schools. We can't go much lower. And if we want to save the Buffalo schools, we've got to take a look and make sure that we're going to be able to capture every student that we can. And so anyone else have anything that they'd like to add?
Real quick,
Lou?
Terry, thank you for recognizing me. Just so everyone's aware that we are constantly monitoring this as it relates to transportation particularly, but at the high school level, the number increases for walkers to 18.4%, with East, followed by Olmsted and then South Park are the three top schools where students walk. And just so you know, at East, it's 33%. At Olmsted, it's 31%, and at South Park, it's 28.7. So we do have certain clusters where we do have a higher percentage, just kind of, put another lens through it so they can understand what we're talking about. But we're also, we've also looked recently about distance that we bus children, like what that did. We broke it down by percentages, less than a mile, 1 to 1.5, 1.5 to 2, 2 to 3, et cetera, et cetera. And then some of the overall distance, because we also transport children outside the city as well. So we were taking, as anyone that served on the Sunrise Committee will tell you, we're constantly looking to refine what this looks like and how to better provide transportation. A related topic for sure, but just want to give you some data.
I appreciate it. And I know in particular for South Park High School, it's the only school in the high school in the quadrant in that part of the city. And so that's something that we've talked about. People think that South Park High School is a neighborhood high school, but we do have close to 70% bussed in. So when people get mad that the South Buffalo schools and the South Buffalo weather are closing, we're because of our weather out there, just keep in mind that South Park has, and all of the schools have many kids that are entering during snowstorms into the South District. So, Dr. Mubanga, is there anything?
Or don't you kind of say one more thing?
Sure.
You go again.
Go ahead.
There's other board members with hands up too.
Oh, I didn't see it. I'm
Yes.
so sorry. I'm so sorry. Okay, go ahead.
I just wanted to emphasize a point here that transportation, of course, is an issue. Who's choosing and where they're choosing is an issue, and then the quality of schools is an issue. And I just, from everything that I've seen studying other cities and counties who have addressed some of these issues, it just seems to me that addressing only one of those is not sufficient. So it'll fix something for sure. It might bring down costs for busing. It might make things more efficient down at the central office. But really, it's looking at all three of those things at once and the interconnectedness of those things, right? Because imagine what your conversation could be if all elementary schools or K-8 schools were all high-performing schools, right? If all of them were high-performing, you'd have a really different conversation in here if there were certain things that people still weren't happy about, like the cost of transportation or, whatever it is. So I think it's really important that, and that's hard. It's hard to kind of think about those. You see them as like separate buckets, but they're all connected. And only addressing one lever without addressing the others, I think it's kind of predictable that you're not going to see this vision of all students, African American students, linguistically diverse students having the same shots at excellent high schools, at criteria-based high schools. I just want to emphasize that point.
Another point is that, just so you know, we have a framework that we started to circulate to try to get input on and feedback from. And so in our initial framework, we're not talking about high schools. We're talking about K-8 schools, right? High schools is a different conversation, and it's part of the conversation. But I want to make it clear that, we're talking about K-8 schools. We're also, dealing with the reality of what the actual numbers are in terms of when we talk about desegregating schools in a school where you got 80% Black and brown children. I don't know what we're really talking about. Are we talking about taking the 20% of white children and sending them to East Side schools so we can be, I mean, what are we talking about? I mean, we can't be talking about that, right? So, the conversation really is about how we make sure that we have, all the right people in the conversation to actually come up with an actionable agenda.
Board Member Everhart?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Sam and Susan, for your presentation. This issue is very near and dear to my heart. I'm from the School of Paulo Freire and Community Schools. And so I really do love the concept, but my fear is what's going on at East. So we have 33% walkers at East, but they're severely under-resourced. We're getting emails about East not having opening on time because of a security guard being absent. We have super seniors, what is called over there, to where kids have 3 or 4 credits by senior year. And so what I would like to see in the study or part of the research is how can we still fund these schools and make these schools high performing schools and kind of fulfill that Paulo Freire community school ideal where the students are learning what is important within that community, having teachers also from that community and administrators also from that community, because we have a huge issue with having 80% minority district as far as kids are concerned, but at 80% white teachers within the schools. And these are also at East, also at other schools that are within the community. So I'm just not sure how we can fulfill the community school model, our neighborhood school model, have equity in also the teachers and also in what the kids are able to have and the what the school can provide. So I think the focus really needs to be on, if we are going to be segregating according to community and neighborhood, we really got to look at the administrators, and we really need to look at the teachers, and we really need to look at what is going into the programming of that school that is relatable to the students. That's my biggest concern.
Good point. Thank you. Thank you. I just want to make a comment. Been looking at data of how many students are walkers at some of our elementary schools. And I was dumbfounded to find that we have schools that have 3% walkers, 7.6% walkers. I'm just like so baffled that we've come to where kids, we've just not made that a priority with our community school focus. Even though these schools may not have been designated as community schools, but I would have hoped that that would have morphed into something that we've embraced as a district. And that was just very concerning, that 3.2% at one of our schools are kids that walk. And I think of the parents. If your kid is in a school that you can't get to, this really is, I think, a really something that we're not supporting parents. If we're making 97% of them have to worry about how they're going to get to a school. That's just doesn't make sense to me. And I just look forward as I go into retirement, that this is visited and it continues the conversation. Is anyone else? I can't see anyone else have their hand up? One other, is it Jen? Jen,
Hi, everybody. And thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the presentation. So I feel that this conversation, Sam, you're correct, 150% correct. This conversation's been going round and round in circles for so long. But we as a district, based on what board member Scott had said, we had to react to something, but we did not. And I'm sorry, Dr. Mubenga, but this is now in your pocket. We did not do all of the data. We did not do the communication the way that we needed to. Being on the doors, recently, all you hear is the miscommunication around the transportation. All you hear is the miscommunication around community schools versus neighborhood schools, and then why, and then all the points make sense. So for me, yes, the research needs to be done, and everything that board member Everhart brought up was a lot of what I wanted to bring up myself, but I really believe that we also are not being uniform around the issues. And this is where you have folks who are rightfully so a little angry because we've been talking about it, but we as a district have not done with one of the presenters have said is take every single instance and put it in a pot and figure it out. So you can look at community schools, even though it's not the quote unquote model, you can look at community schools as like the hub for the community to come to and get resources that are not on an everyday level, at least until we figure out what we're doing with our schools. My biggest concern has been brought up a few times, but I am very concerned at how West and East schools are resourced as opposed to North and South. And a lot of it is not pointing fingers, it just is. So how do we do the research and the data to make sure that those elementary schools all have everything they need? I need, um, I just want to see that. And I would like for the board and the district to be to honest level with folks because there's all of us. So if we can have like a uniform answer as to where we're going with this, whether or not we're going to be researching it, maybe a handout, maybe something we can email a QR code that gives people an opportunity to look at what we're looking into, that would be very helpful.
I just wanted
There's
to,
too many pieces of this same issue. What's that? That's all I had to say. I'm sorry. I'm out. I had to park the car because I wanted to make sure I can get this out.
okay, thank you. I wanted to say, I was one of the original principals for the community schools. And when we went through, there was supposed to be X amount of spots were specifically allocated for kids in the neighborhood. That never happened. There was never any formalization at the high school level. I don't know if it happened at the elementary level. And so I don't know what even the criteria now is for community schools. Is it just community schools that the funding for all of the great, wonderful activities that really have opened up and made, and I would say in the Park District, I'm so appreciative because that was always our goal. We wanted our schools to be the hub of the community. And through the Saturday academies and the evening activities, it really is something that we truly appreciate. But I just don't know what the criteria is for preference for people at all our community schools throughout the city. So that's where is something we may want to also look into.
Can we one more comment?
Sure.
One of the other opportunities I think that's available to us if we can get access to the data, if the university can get access to the data, is we can know if we know the children that we know what neighborhoods the children live in. You know, if we can actually go and get the data for what kids will be going to what schools, and we'll know. Who the kids are in that school. How they are testing, and we'll see. We can get an advanced look at what schools will look like. You know what I'm saying? What resources they will need. You know what I'm saying? Because it's just a matter of having access to the data. The other thing that I think is important, the first time I went to as a parent leader, I went to a parent meeting that required a translator. The first thing that the parent that was trying to communicate to me through the translator was that she was new to this country and she didn't understand what was happening when she had to have her child at the bus stop. Then the bus would come take her child and she don't know where they was taking her child to. And then the bus would just bring the child back and she didn't have a relationship to what was going on in between. You know what I'm saying? She couldn't get to the school. She didn't have access to the school. She went to central, to register the child for school. But a relationship with the school she didn't have because they placed her child in a school in South Buffalo. You know what I'm saying? So my point is that there are so many ways that we are disenfranchising, a significant number of parents, a significant number of community people that we are band-aiding. We're doing some stuff, through the Saturday academies and that kind of thing. But this is not that difficult. This is really kind of fundamental. You know what I'm saying? Especially when you talk about little children, K through 3, K through 5, putting a child that age on a bus, sending them across town. These are not difficult things to think through. Here's what we're saying though. In the past, these conversations have started and stopped. We as a task force will, be at these board meetings. We will be with the superintendent, and we will follow through. With the research, with the advocacy. We will go to the Common Council and get the comments to see if we can get their support. We will begin to bring in our state legislators. We will start the advocacy process to make sure this conversation doesn't start and stop. So you will hear from us again in January regarding research, and then what we will do is to share with you what we have in terms of our initial framework. And hopefully, Dr. Mubenga, you will identify some people from the staff that we can potentially, engage with, so that we can start a process to move this along.
Yeah, I'm going to now Dr. Mubanga. Is there anything that you would like to add and to close out?
All right, thank you. I have my 2 cents here. Just I want to react to all the comments. And thank you for the opportunity. First of all, let me just say thank you to our 2 wonderful guests for bringing this conversation. It's really important. This is a conversation that we need to be having as we're facing some of the challenges in our district. But as I heard, some board members also were able to bring other factors that were not highlighted with this particular proposal. Um, I know we're going with a lot of assumptions here, and I just want us to be a little bit careful as we're going with a lot of assumptions. We have to be able to do research, and that's just going to give us some solution to our problems. But I don't want us to be able to be trying something that we may not have a proven result or example or exemplar from other city schools that we can really replicate here. So that's my only wonders there. Uh, if I were the one that's really making this decision, I would like for us to start with student assignment first. We got to look at the policy we have in place. Is it working or is not working? It's something that we need to be revisiting and be able to make adjustment as we're moving forward. Transportation being an issue, yes, I think you guys in the past have been able to make some decisions there. Is it working properly? No. What are the challenges? We still have those 3 tiers. The gap, the time between transitions was not well thought of. By the time they're dropping off the students, it's not enough time for them to go to the second route and then the third rounds. So that is causing the problems. So those are the things that I'm more concerned. Let's start really readdressing those issues so we can get to a better place. Student assignments, that will be pretty much where I would like to start before we can conduct any research. Conversation, yes. Are we going with the assumption that if we fix transportation, we fix student attendance, or that will address all our problems? I don't think so. We still have a lot of other factors that other board members brought up that we also need to be looking at. I know we have a UB here with us. They have all the expertise but I really want us to be able to be open-minded and bring the right people around the table, the people that have done this work before in the city schools that we're able to see really great results. I had a conversation with Mr. Redford when I met with Urban League, and I told them this work I was able to do in my previous district. It took us a good 3 years before we really got to a point where we implemented. And how did that go? The implementation, I will tell you, mixed feelings there. There were winners and there were losers as well. So this is not something that we need to take lightly. And I don't want us to throw some factors there, just go with some assumptions and do that research. We can come up with whatever result we want to come up with. But I really want us to really to start engaging our board, different retreat with our partnership with our community to start having those conversations, how we're going really to do this research. Just having those limited factors, thinking that that's going to solve the problems that the BPS has, I think that's going to be really short-sighted because we have some complication factors as as you guys were able to implement our transportation last year or 2 years ago, we did not think even some of the factors that teachers union they will be able to buy into the timing. So those are some of the struggles that we're going to have to face. But the conversation, I'm all for the conversation. But when it comes to research, I really want us to have a really serious conversation, start looking at the policies we have first when it comes to student assignment before we can even move forward. So that's my 2 cents, and I respect the conversation we're having, and we need to have a lot of these as we all think the right thing that we can put in place to be able to move our district forward. Back to you, Madam Chair.
And I just want to thank everyone, and I think that was our goal today, is just to start the dialogue. And so it's on the table, and I have no doubt that this conversation will continue, and I appreciate you, Dr. Mubanga. And I'm going to ask everyone to have a great night.
This the only, you only got students up front.
Be blessed, everyone.
It's only you.
We're the only game in town today.
Good.